You ever come across a word that feels, well, super important, but at the same time, it's almost impossible to really grab onto? Today, we're going to unpack one of those. A single, powerful, and, let's be honest, often misunderstood idea from philosophy. So, let's dive in.
Okay, so the word we're talking about is dialectic. For a lot of people, when you hear that word, you just picture these old, dense, dusty books, right? It sounds complicated, maybe a little bit intimidating. So let's just get right to it. What in the world does this term actually mean?
Yeah, that quote just nails that feeling, doesn't it? It's actually from Japan, and it's how they describe their translated word for dialectic, benshouho. And get this, it's been tripping people up since it first showed up in the 1880s. But honestly, it's not just in Japan. The word itself feels heavy, you know? It's because it's carrying around so much history.
But here's the thing. Once you strip away all the jargon, the core idea is surprisingly simple. It's basically a method for finding the truth through conflict. So you start with an idea. We'll call that the thesis. Then you challenge it with a totally conflicting idea. That's the antithesis. And out of that clash, something new and better emerges, a higher level of understanding. That's the synthesis. It's a formula for progress through argument.
Now, to really get a grip on the modern version of this, we have to take a little trip back in time. We're headed to 19th century Germany to meet the philosopher who really put the dialectic on the map, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel.
See, for Hegel, history wasn't just a random bunch of stuff that happened. No way. He saw it as this grand cosmic conversation where ideas were constantly evolving through this really elegant three-step dance. An idea gets put out there, its opposite rises up to challenge it, and the conflict between them gets resolved into a newer, more complete idea. And then, that new idea becomes the new thesis and the whole dance starts all over again, always pushing us forward.
And you have to understand, for Hegel, this was not just about winning an argument over coffee. He saw this dialectical process as the literal engine driving all of human history, all of society, all of consciousness itself. It was the story of what he called Geist. It's a German word for spirit or mind, basically unfolding and figuring itself out over time. The real battles, the ones that truly mattered, weren't happening in the streets. They were happening in the world of ideas.
But then, along comes one of Hegel's most famous students, a guy named Karl Marx. And he looked at this powerful three-step engine his teacher described and thought, wow, this is brilliant, but it's running in completely the wrong place. So he took Hegel's incredible idea and turned it completely upside down.
And yeah, that's the classic phrase you always hear to describe what Marx did. It's a pretty revolutionary shift. He took Hegel's powerful framework, but he decided to apply it not to the abstract world of ideas, but to the real, physical, material world that we all live in.
So here's the bottom line. Hegel was an idealist. He believed that our ideas, our collective spirit, the Geist, that's what shapes our reality, our society. Marx, on the other hand, was a materialist. He argued the exact opposite. He said, nope, you've got it all backwards. For Marx, it's our material world, specifically our economic conditions, the class struggles that come from them, that's what shapes our ideas, our politics, our religion, everything. So for him, the battle wasn't thesis versus antithesis, it was the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat.
Okay, so this brings us right back to where we started. The word dialectic is tough. It's all tied up in this really heavy specific history with Hegel and Marx. So the question is, what if we could reframe it for today? What if we could capture its essence in a way that's a little more intuitive?
Well, check this out. A modern coaching institute in Japan took a look at that heavy, hard-sounding word, benshouho, and proposed a totally new phrase, Ishitsu no Chowa. What it means is harmony of the heterogeneous, or finding harmony between different things. And all of a sudden, the focus shifts. It's not about conflict anymore, it's about collaboration.
This reframing is kind of a game changer. It takes the dialectic from being this abstract historical theory and turns it into a practical tool you can use in your everyday life. It's about actually listening to different opinions. It's about finding the most reasonable way forward when you have conflicting views. You know, like when a politician tries to find a settlement that works for everybody. The goal is to build a foundation for mutual understanding. It's still that synthesis part of the dialectic, but now it's framed as a collaborative goal, not just the end of a fight.
But is this clash and synthesis model really the only way ideas evolve? Turns out, an 18th century Japanese thinker named Tominaga Nakamoto offered a really fascinating alternative.
He came up with a theory called Kajo. He spent his time studying ancient religious texts, and he came to a pretty radical conclusion that many of them weren't just some single original vision.
Instead, he argued that ideas often evolve through a process of layering. Later generations come along and they edit, they reinterpret, and they simply add on to what was already there. It's less of a battle and a lot more like a continuous group edit.
So, this leaves us with a final, fascinating question to chew on. When you watch a debate or see a big idea change over time, what are you really seeing? Is it a Hegelian dialectic in action, where two opposing forces are clashing to create something brand new? Or is it more like Tominaga's Kajo, where we're just watching the latest layer get added to an ever-growing story? The next time you see a great argument, you'll know exactly what to look for.